What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is Overlanding Now, and today what I wanted to discuss is cheap tires. But cheap tires aren't really cheap. The reason I named it cheap tires is because there's not many searches on YouTube for budget tires. So cheap tires is the way we went. But realistically, what we want to talk about is the budget brand tires. And I also want to talk about all the other tires out there and how they compare. We have a whole bunch of information. I've been doing research all morning to try to understand the budget tires versus the expensive, more well-known tires, and why those other tires are so expensive in comparison to a budget tire. So, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel, and we're going to get right into it.
Catch me, nah, 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 nah. Yeah, move with it. Move with it, move with it. Move with it, move with it. Move with it,
Now, what I want to talk about is budget tires, cheap tires versus name brand tires and traditionally more expensive tires. When we got our Jeep, it came with BFG KO2s, which everybody on the internet and pretty much around the world love the BF Goodrich KO2. Ours were all terrain. I'm sure their mud terrains, if they have a mud terrain, is even better. But the KO2s from BF Goodrich are absolutely incredible tires. Now, when we were discussing getting new wheels and adding 35s to our Jeep, we were kind of caught in between what makes the most sense. Should we go with a more expensive tire because we did love the BFGs, or should we go with a less expensive tire? And what all the factors are that go into creating a tire, making a tire, and how those work on and off road. Now, we elected to go with a budget tire, a cheap tire. And there were a couple reasons for that. The first reason was price. They were significantly less expensive, about 25% less expensive per tire, and they had the same mile warranty on them. They had the same load rating, which load rating is like this whole scientific thing that we're going to get into here in a minute. And they had the same tread depth. So as I was doing research and I was looking around for a budget tire versus a more expensive traditional tire, I opted to go with a cheaper tire because I wanted to see what it was actually able to do, if it would perform, and that way I can make a video about what type of tire you should get, or if you should spend the money on a more expensive tire. Now, after ultimately making the decision to go with a cheaper tire, we understood that there may come a time when we're out there deep into the wilderness and we run into an issue where one of our tires goes flat or we pop a tire, and that was a risk that I was willing to take because the tires that we purchased ended up costing us $1,000 for 5 tires, okay? Now, the comparable tire, BFG KO2, the Nitto Ridge Grapplers, the Falken Wild Peaks, all of those tires were at least $500 more expensive for the set of 5. So if you look at the comparison of the actual cost of the tire versus what you're going to be doing with it, I think it's definitely worth taking a look at a cheaper tire. Now, obviously, when you're off-road or you're going overlanding, whatever it is that you do, you have to know what your tire is capable of. And that's when load rating comes into play. Now, the load rating of your tires is important to know because especially with us, that the guys that really like to go overlanding and they really pack their vehicles out, I can tell you right now that my vehicle is far over its gross vehicle weight when I take off on a trip. Now, I understand that, but it's kind of what comes with the territory. There's really no way for me to eliminate all of that weight or to reduce it down to a more acceptable weight to keep it under that GVWR. So when we made the decision to ultimately purchase a budget tire, I knew what I was getting myself into. I knew that there may come a time where these tires do not perform as well as the stock tires came on the Rubicon, because those tires that came on the Rubicon were absolutely fantastic. I mean, we hadn't had the Jeep for 1,000 miles before we drove it across the country, and we were out in Moab in the wintertime, and they did really well. There's a lot of ice out there in the wintertime, and I was extremely impressed and happy with the BF Goodrich tire that came on the Jeep originally. So that right there was what made it a little bit difficult for me to make a decision to go with a cheaper tire. But I figured if I didn't at least try it, I wouldn't know. And if we pop a tire, obviously most of us, if not all of us, carry a spare tire when we're on the trail. So my thought process was, even if one goes bad or we put a hole in the sidewall of one of these tires, A, I have a tire patch kit, and B, worst case scenario, I can take the spare off and throw it on, and we would be able to be back on the trail in no time. Needless to say, we ended up going with a budget tire, a cheap tire, which is fine. And the reason we did that is because I felt confident in knowing that even if we put a hole in the sidewall of one of these tires while we're out on the trail, worst case scenario, I can put the spare on, because 99.9% of all of us who are off-road in our rigs carry a spare tire, or I would be able to patch it with the tire patch kit. One of the two would happen, and I would be able to get back to safety until I was able to get another tire. So I wasn't really concerned if I popped one. Now, if I popped two, I would have a little bit of a different outlook on this. But the reality is the AMP tires that I have on my vehicle have been absolutely fantastic. And like I said earlier, they were, I don't want to say a fraction, but they were about 30%, if you do the math, cheaper than the Nittos, the Wild Peaks, and the BF Goodrich tires. And they have held up exceptionally well. I haven't had any uneven tire wear. Obviously, I have an alignment and the vehicle's driving straight, so that helps. But we have hit the sidewalls on pointy rocks. We have climbed the top of the world trail. We have driven hundreds and hundreds of miles of off-road trails, as well as thousands and thousands of miles of on-road driving. So with all of that being said and taking all of that into consideration, I am extremely happy with going with a budget tire. Now, if you're looking for budget tires and you're kind of on the fence about what to do, I would say it's probably worth giving it a shot if you are comfortable fixing your rig while you're on the trail, or knowing how to change a spare tire, which I hope you know how to change a spare tire. But either way, we went with a budget tire because A, I wanted to see the actual performance. And B, what makes those other tires so expensive? And to be quite honest with you, I would have to say it's the name. Now, there are going to be a lot of diehards that watch this video that are never going to go away from BF Goodrich or never going to go away from Nitto, and that is totally fine. This is not necessarily trying to steer people in the direction to purchase a cheaper tire. The reason I did it is because I wanted to know if there was a real difference. Now, I am sure there has to be some type of difference, but let's be honest, AMP Tires is a much smaller tire company than BF Goodrich tires. So if you want to get into economics and the basics of how business works, more overhead means you have to make up a greater margin. Less overhead means you have a greater margin. So the only way for them to make money is to charge more for their tires. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure somebody has some better information about this than me, but I can tell you from an end user experience, I have had the AMP tires on my vehicle for 14,000 miles, and they have performed out of this world. I have no issues with them whatsoever. Quite honestly, if I was going to get another tire, this is the tire I would get. I'm not getting paid to say anything with AMP. I have no affiliation with AMP tires. But for people who are beginning overlanding or beginner off-roaders and they want to start doing new and more modifications to their rig, they're going to want to look at different options. And I think there's a lot of options out there. And if you just go with something that you know is tried and true, that's definitely the safe bet. But if you don't have any problem spending that kind of money, then I would say have at it. Now, probably the single most important part of this entire video is how much these tires cost. Now, once again, I have them on my phone, so I'm gonna have to look at my phone because I can't remember all these numbers. So for the BFG KO2s in a 35, 35, 12 and a half, 17. You're looking at $311 per tire. Now for the Wild Peaks, the Falken Wild Peaks, 35-inch tire, all-terrain, between $294 and $317 is what I was able to find them at. Now for your Mickey Thompson Bajas, I put those in there because I have those on my F250. They're loud, they're mud terrain, but I love them. They've been great so far. Those are $306 per tire. And your Nitto Ridge Grapplers are $317 per tire in the 35. Now, the Amp tires that I purchased came out to just over $200 per tire. It was like $1,050 with tax and everything out the door. So when you start looking into the comparison of how much all of these tires cost, what you're willing to spend, now you're only saving $400 or $500 by going with a cheaper tire. But if you have other things that you want to do to your rig that may be more important, then maybe that's something you want to look into. I'm just giving you the information that I have, and you can make your own decision. Now, all these tires have a load rating index between 121 and 124. I was going to try to remember about load rating and try to memorize this short couple of sentences, but I want to read it to you off my phone because it explains load rating, and it's a way better way to put it to you guys than me trying to explain it with my own words. A light truck with a load index of 120 to 116 means a load capacity for a single tire is 3,086 pounds and a load capacity of 2,756 pounds for two tires. The reason the capacity for two tires is lower than a single tire is to make sure the vehicle can continue to carry the load should one tire fail. Now, I found that on BF Goodrich's website, and I'm going to link that website below because it has a lot of really good information about load rating and just about tires. Now, I know there's different plies. I know that there are a lot of different variations of tire and how all of this comes into play. But what you have to look at is if you have the money to spend on an extremely well-marketed and well-known tire, then absolutely you kind of know what you're getting. The reason I went with the cheaper tire is because I was willing to take the risk. I was willing to see what would happen. And to be honest with you, I saved 30% more than what other people would save because I took a shot. Now, that could have backfired terribly. But up until today, it has not. I am extremely happy with these tires. So in synopsis, what I would say is that if you're looking for a new tire, or you're beginning overlanding, or you're beginning off-roading, or you're looking to make a change, and you don't have the $1,500 it's going to cost to put new tires on your rig, take a look at a cheaper off-brand tire. I can only attest for Amp tires. Those are the only tires that I've ran that have performed exceptionally well that are not a name brand tire. So once again, I don't get paid to say it. They're not paying me, but I think the information is useful to people who are just getting into this, or maybe people who have been in this for a while that want to try something different. Another factor that is extremely important to a lot of people when they're purchasing a tire, whether it's a cheap tire or an expensive tire, is the road noise. Now, I haven't had any 35s or 37s of BFGs, Nitto, or Falkens. I've had the Amp tires and a 35, and I've had the standard stock tire that came on the Rubicon, which was that BFG. Now, I will say that the road noise with the Amp tires is minimal at best. You're definitely going to hear the tire hum when you're going down the road. I have all terrains. I did not opt to go with mud terrains this time. My next tire will be a mud terrain only because I want to know the difference and see what it's all about. But the road noise with these tires is not that extreme. And if you're going to put a larger tire on your rig at all, whether it's mud terrain or all terrain, you're going to get road noise. There's really no way around that. So before you purchase one and think it's going to be the quietest tire you've ever heard, just understand, when you put more rubber on the road and you're at highway speeds, they're going to make noise. Now, if you found this video helpful today, please do me a favor, like the video. If you didn't find it helpful, don't just dislike it. Give me some information about what your opinion is on this. So many people will put a thumbs down on a video, but not leave a comment. I'm interested to know what other information is out there that I'm not understanding or that I just don't know. I don't want to misrepresent anything that I'm doing, but I'm going to give a real life experience that I've had with these products so people can make their own informed decisions. So Thank you for everything. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll talk to you soon.